You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm MEZ, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Ryan. And you're listening to Season Quinqui of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast. That means Season 5, by the way. I think people know this at this point. I'm sorry. But yeah.
I gotta ask, do you know what 6 is for next season? Do you have that prepared?
Of course. Sure. Have to do a little Google search. All right, with a podcast in which Ryan is the expert on Warhammer 40K and I'm the noob trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. And we got a lot in store for today. Might be a little bit of a slightly longer episode. We may or may not round up the Ork saga. Well, not saga, but season at least, right?
Yeah.
So let's just get into it.
Alrighty, Root. Buckle up, kiddies. So we left off last time. Obviously, we covered the kind of intro to the Octarius War, the kind of arrival or ending with the arrival and then subsequent departure of Ghazghkull from the Octarius sector. And obviously, he's off to go mess with humanity. But obviously, we are staying with Octarius while they're getting ravaged by Tyranids. And it kind of kicks off this little... After Ghazghkull leaves, there's a little bit where it's a lot of small-scale wars that kind of go on. So, after Ghazghkull leaves, we see Chaos getting involved in the fight properly. Because obviously, every time there's a big war like this, Chaos has to, Khorne at least, is going to be like, ooh, free skulls. So, Khorne's dudes are gonna turn up at some point when you get a big enough war. It's just a matter of time, right? And
yeah.
Now, I find it quite coincidental, but they wait till after Ghazghkull leaves to turn up. I'm like, I feel like Khorne's on Ghazghkull's side. This dude's gonna pay off big time for me. So, after Ghazghkull's gone, we see Chaos start to turn up. And initially, it's in the form of this little Chaos warband of World Eaters, they're led by a guy called Voda Bloodprice, which is not a great name. And the group calls themselves Skull Hunt, not the Skull Hunt, just Skull Hunt. It's not a great name, but it is very on brand.
Well, yeah.
So these dudes, they kind of rock up over this one planet, which is it's basically a big world with tons of orcs and Tyranids fighting on it, right? Just because it's a big planet, there are an absurd amount of orcs there, so they have to send in an absurd amount of Tyranids. So these dudes are great place to gather skulls. So they rock up there and start doing that. And eventually, Voda takes the axe that was dropped by an orc war boss that he killed, I assume, and uses it to murder a Bio-Titan, which I don't think I've showed you these, but this is a Tyranid Bio-Titan. They are gigantic. This is their version of a massive siege beast for taking down walls and shit. So, yeah, he takes an axe from a dead orc war boss and uses it to gut one of these things. And apparently that was, the last straw from Khorne to promote this guy. So Voda turns into a demon. He goes, full, demonic possession mode. And, turns all fiery and stuff.
Yeah.
And... having ascended to demonhood, obviously, he's got a better promotion there, he's a lot tougher. So he just rounds up an even bigger group of soldiers, random people just join into his warband, and they head to a world that is just called the Maw, as in, the Maw. And, again, really big planet with billions of orcs on this one, and they just throw themselves in and start murdering stuff in the name of Khorne. So, Chaos doesn't really do particularly much in this war, but, they're around.
Yeah.
and whoever the hell Voda Bloodprice is, he got promoted, so, I mean, good for him. I'll be honest with you, we never hear about him again.
Irrelevant.
Yeah, but good for him.
Yeah. The moment to shine.
Yeah, exactly. We can be proud of Voda for his individual accomplishments. He doesn't have to change the world. Fucking Voda blood priest. Such a pointless character. I love it. This is where I'm gonna find someone's gonna correct me and be like, actually, he was this guy during the Horus Heresy, and he's been around for like 10,000 years, and he's a nutcase. Like, oh, I didn't realize he changed his name. Right. It's gonna be one of those guys, I'm sure of it. Because there's a lot of them. Like, there's a surprising amount of them. So, it's kind of around this point, after Ghazghkull's left and the war's kind of grinding on slowly. But you gotta remember, the Orks kind of rallied when Ghazghkull turned up. So, the war is gonna keep going a lot longer than it would have had he not came in and, like, reorganized. But it's around this kind of point where the Inquisition start to realize that Cryptman fucked up when he sent these two enemies at each other, because they both just seem bigger and stronger than ever. Like, it seems to have only benefited both sides being put in this war. So, obviously, Cryptman had realized that this was a bad idea shortly before this, but when it was too late to do anything about it. But now, like, the greater Imperium starts to realize that that guy made a mistake. So, they basically decide to set up a cordon around the whole area and be like, nothing gets in or out. Right? We just need to make sure that none of these things spill out and start taking over the rest of the galaxy. Because the Orks might try to run away from the Tyranids. The Tyranids might put too many troops in and just start spilling out naturally. We need to make sure they don't do that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, this leads to a series of fairly major wars on the kind of skirts of this area to try and stop things getting in or out. But... honestly, it's primarily Tyranids versus humanity, and there's one bit that's pretty major with Orks, but it's not really related to the Octarius war as a whole. It's more of like a separate battle that took place during this war. You know what I mean? It doesn't really have any standing in the grand scheme of the Octarius war. Had the Orks there won rather than the Imperium winning, all that would have happened is a big group of Orks would have, like, expanded out and caused more hassle elsewhere. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have affected this war. So we're not going to look at that stuff right now. We're going to stick to the Octarius bit of it. And the benefit is that with everyone kind of held into this area by humanity kind of skirting the edges, pretty quickly after that kind of sets in, the Tyranid Swarmlord, I keep saying Stormlord, Swarmlord, which is this guy, big dude. He is obviously the leader of the Tyranids in this group. He decides it's time to go for Octarius and take out the Overfiend. End this whole Orc nonsense once and for all. He's sick of this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in doing this, the first thing he does is he goes, right, spread out the Tyranid army, attack on multiple fronts, make sure there are no reinforcements that can come to Octarius. Like, they can come to the main planet, right? This obviously leads to a few random planets getting totally demolished. There's a few that are quite notable that I thought were quite interesting, so I'm going to mention a couple of them, but again, these are away from the main planet of the Octaria system and its war. But one of them is the planet Ork, which we mentioned earlier on in this. They just get like wiped out in like 2 days. Tyranids just descend and devour everything. They're just gone. Next is an asteroid base known as Gork's Bonds, which is a great name. Yeah. Great in the sense that it's funny, not in the sense that it's a good name. not in terms of quality, just amusement. Great.
Yeah.
So Gork's Bonds, this asteroid base, belongs to a bunch of big mechs, the Orc engineers, And they came under pretty massive assault from the Tyranids. But all these like big mechs did was they went, this is a great opportunity to test out all the crazy weapons we built. So then you've just got them unleashing like cannons that fire lightning and stuff, and just turning whole swarms of Tyranids into goo.
Lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, so those guys do pretty heavy damage to the Tyranids that come for them. But again, Tyranids adapt to everything. So what they did was they did like one more attack, and during it, they like sneakily infected a bunch of dudes with the whole Gene Stealer thing. So that now the Tyranids had like spies on the inside. And then to put them to use, what they did was they surrounded the asteroid, attacked from every side. And then while the Orcs were like rushing to defend, the Gene Stealers in their midst just went and turned off their life support systems, so all the air just dissipated, and then they just opened all the doors to the void, so they just suffocated the Orcs while they were trying to fight back. Pretty crap, to be honest with you.
It's pretty rough. That's tough.
Yeah. And the last of these little like fun side worlds that got ravaged, I'll mention, is one called Bad Squig, which is pretty good. So this place has like billions of orcs on it, and there is a war boss there named Garnat Stompkrumpa, which is a ridiculous name. But
I like it. I like them. Yeah,
it's not bad, but Stompkrumpa is a beastmaster, right? He likes to have animals to fight with him and stuff like that. So he has not only billions of orcs on the planet that are all mobilized for war when the Tyranids turn up, he also has thousands of squigosaurs, which are the big giant dinosaur squigs. So, war takes place, and the numbers of the orcs are like slowly whittled down bit by bit. Pretty standard stuff when you're up against an endless sea of space bugs. You're going to be whittled away at bit by bit.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Stompkrumpa actually did manage to capture a Carnifex at one point, one of the Vanguard Tyranids, and he thought, because he thinks they're animals, so he's like, I'll just tame it and make it fight for me. He lost an arm, a leg, and an eye trying to do that.
And a lot of brain cells. Oh, wait, he didn't have them.
Yeah, clearly didn't have them to begin with. But this whole story ends with Stompkrumpa going like full Captain Ahab and having like a white whale. So all the orcs they get this idea about a Biotitan which has glowing yellow eyes and blue skin. Right, I'll switch back to the Biotitan. So anyway, glowing yellow eyes, blue skin, one of these guys. And Stompkrumpa is like, I have to have it. And I don't know if his intention was, again, to try and tame a Tyranid, which would not have worked, especially on one like 10 times the size of the last one that he lost an arm, a leg, and an eye to. But I don't know if his plan was to kill it or to tame it. But he gets obsessed with this, as do a lot of his orcs. They all get this whole idea of like hunting it. They just call it the blue one, which is fun. But Stompkrumpa starts setting trap after trap after trap to try and get this thing. And all that happens is every time the trap fails, and thousands of his orcs die needlessly. And the whole thing finally culminates with him spotting the blue one at the bottom of like a dry lake bed. And so it's just a big clear empty basin with this thing sitting at the bottom. So all of his orcs charge in to get it. Obviously it's a trap, so they just get swarmed from behind by Tyranids and devoured.
Nice.
And I feel like that's a better version of the Captain Ahab storyline.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the gist of the fun war stories I'm going to cover. Now we get to Octaria itself, the main planet of this whole Orc Empire, where the main war boss, the Overfiend of Octarius, is based. And again, the Swarm Lord himself is going for this planet. So the first thing is he moves a whole fleet in to blockade the planet. No reinforcements are coming in here. Obviously, the Orc fleet fights back, but they are gradually whittled away at. Doesn't matter how good an Orc fleet you have, an endless fleet of Tyranids will eventually win. Obviously, Tyranids take losses, but in the end they do win. So the Stormlord has orbital superiority over this planet. So, remember, there are a ton of Tyranids already on the planet, because we've done the whole cover when the war kicked off here. So, to reinforce them, the Swarmlord sends in a bunch of, like, kind of vanguard troops, like mid-level Tyranids that fight with, like, melee combat into the Orc lines, but, like, amongst the Orc army. So they're just getting these random drops of fucking space bugs in their art, like, within their battle lines and stuff, to just wreak absolute havoc. So the Orc armies are quickly thrown into this state where there's, like, no order. They can't, like, keep anything under control now. And it gives the troops that were it gives the Tyranids that were already on the ground time to kind of reorganize, kind of get back into position, kind of condense their forces. That's the term. It gives them time to, like, condense their forces into, like, a usable state again. So while that is going on, because it's going to take time for them all to get in place and everything like that, the Swarmlord goes, right, we need to get rid of the flying Orcs. So it sends in a bunch of flying troops and gradually picks off all the Orc planes and helicopters and stuff. And, of course, the Orcs are fighting back this whole time. So the Tyranids are taking pretty heavy losses through all of this. Because, like, this is the Empire's homeworld. It's well defended. There are a few fun ways they defend themselves. Obviously, the big mechs that they have giant guns that are just wiping swathes of Tyranids out. There are mountain fortresses that the Tyranids are having a really hard time breaking through, stuff like that. My favourite, though, is that they just use really big magnets to pick up a bunch of Tyranids and drop them into a city-sized furnace.
Okay.
Orcs get creative, man.
They really do. Who said orcs are stupid, you know? They're stupid.
If it's stupid and it works, it ain't stupid. And that is, like, the Orc fucking tagline.
That is something I live by as well. I agree.
Yeah. So, as the war kind of grinds on, the Tyranids are obviously relying on sheer numbers. It's like their greatest benefit. Sheer numbers and adaptability. It's like their two things. So they're relying on sheer numbers to grind away at the Orcs. And once there were, like, some areas that the Tyranids, like, definitely controlled, like a big enough area, they started setting up the acid pools to be able to, like, start stripping biomass from the planet. So all the dead Orcs get launched in the acid pool. All the plants and everything like that in the acid pool. Every mineral they find in the acid pool. Anything and everything. But this allows the Tyranids to start making fresh space bugs from the planet's own resources to send to attack the planet.
Huh.
So you're now being murdered by what used to be some kind of tree in the form of a giant space bug now.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not a great situation to be in, if I'm honest.
Not really.
No. And as all this is kind of going on and the war's grinding on, the Overfiend finds himself kind of isolated. All of his, like, lieutenants and stuff are killed just one by one in the fighting. So he's kind of, like, running the whole show on his own now, which is not a great way to be if you're a general of a massive army.
Yeah.
And this is when the Swarmlord is like, it's time to go kill this guy. Because in the fighting, the Overfiend, while murdering a Carnifex, had been, like, stabbed in the thigh. So he was, like, fairly injured. That's when the Swarmlord's like, it's time, go, go, go. So the Swarmlord takes to the ground itself, gathers around him this massive swarm of Carnifexes and... Oh god, what? Oh, was it Bio-Titans? No, it wasn't. It's called Carnifexes and Tyrant Guards. So, big, jaggy space bugs, basically. Gathers around it, loads of these fuckers, charges down the Overfiend. most of the Tyrant Guards and the Carnifexes are murdered by big mechs with axes and stuff. But all that, like, that's not really a bad thing, because what it means is that the Overfiend and the Swarm Lord end up locked in, like, one-on-one combat. And in this kind of like one-on-one duel they have, the Overfiend, obviously being that he's a big angry orc, just keeps swinging violently. And if he landed a solid hit, he would probably be able to kill the Swarm Lord. But the Swarm Lord is a bit more calculating than the orc is. It's not driven by anger or anything like that. So it kind of like dodges and parries and waits for an opening. Whereas the orc is just swinging blind, basically. Just brute force and nothing else. No finesse at all. And eventually, the Swarm Lord manages to cut the power cable to his power claw, which means that it just becomes a big dead weight hanging at his side. So he can barely move now, and the Swarm Lord cracks his head open and eats his brain.
Oh, gosh.
And that is how the Tyranids won the Octarius War. Because after that, the Orcs kind of fall apart a bit, you know? Tale as old as time, as we've said before.
Yeah.
Obviously, the war does continue because the orcs all just kind of dissipate into the surrounding area because it isn't just this one planet. So there were still, millions of orcs on totally separate worlds that had barely fought any Tyranids yet and stuff like that. So the war didn't end with that, but the main planet of the entire empire is like stripped of all its biomass. So, I mean, I think that's a victory condition if ever I've heard one. Yeah. And since the Overfiend died, at least 6 other orcs have declared themselves the new Overfiend and are all just building their own army on separate planets within this empire. So, like, the fight is still going on. It's just not directed at one guy anymore. And it's not as cohesive an army of orcs either. But... Still, so, as modern day as we know about from the novels or anything like that, the Octarius War is still going on. Just like, the war is... the Octarius War as a title is over, the battles are still fighting, though. Thanks. Alright. We have one last bit to do. Right? And we're going to end it with your boy Ghazghkull.
Thraka. The main man.
Yes.
So we started with Thraka and we ended with Thraka, essentially.
Yeah. I'll put a picture of Ghazghkull. There he is.
Yeah.
He's a cool guy. So, in the early 42nd millennia, right? So this is like in the period shortly after the fall of Acadia and the opening of the Great Rift and all that stuff. There is an event that occurs called the Psychic Awakening. That is how Games Workshop titled it, as a series of like campaign battles to play in the actual game. But it's very much an orc-based thing. So, Ghazghkull left Octarius with this massive army to go harass humanity. And... as we've mentioned many a time, whenever there's a big army of orcs, other orcs from nearby will swarm to join it, making it even bigger, because they feel this natural call to war. But while that was going on, an odd thing occurred at this point in time, which is that orc shamans started having visions from the gods telling them to go join Ghazghkull specifically. So... it was all across the galaxy, orcs were swarming to Ghazghkull personally because of these visions from Gork and Mork.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So his numbers start swelling massively. There is an ungodly number of orcs following this fucker. Now, at the same time, which is it's the really odd part of this, at the exact same time, the Space Wolves, Rune Priests, started having visions as well, which were of the orc race united as one big army under like Ghazghkull's banner. So they're like panicking because they need to make sure this doesn't happen. The only thing that stops the Orks from wiping out all life in the galaxy other than Orks is that they all fight amongst themselves too much and they don't follow one leader. So if the Orcs ever unified, they would basically wipe the place in no time because of the sheer numbers they have. So this is a terrifying thought that Ghazghkull could unite all the Orcs. So the Space Wolves are like, we need to go kill those guys really quickly. So the Space Wolves start going out and hunting Orcs wherever they find them, with the goal of eventually finding and killing Ghazghkull himself. And there are a series of major wars that come out of this. There are major battles that come out of this. But the main one is a final battle between the Space Wolves and the Orcs. And it's Ghazghkull obviously defending himself for the Orcs. And Ragnar Blackmane, who is one of the Wolf Lords for the Space Wolves. It's the equivalent of like a chapter master. But they never split up into chapters, so they don't use that title. But yeah, it's the equivalent of like a chapter master. Kind of, I guess. Whatever. So...
Sure.
Yeah. So eventually the Space Wolves hunt down Ghazghkull on this like world he's using as like a command center, or like a home base, called Krongar, which actually have a really cool artwork for it. Like battle. Orcs versus Space Wolves on Krongar. So they hunt him down here, and obviously massive war breaks out, as you can tell from that. And it ends up with Ragnar chasing Ghazghkull into a big-ass cathedral. And Ghazghkull had planned for this, because Ghazghkull's been having visions of him murdering Ragnar Blackmane in one-on-one combat. He knows he needs to fight this one-on-one. So he planned this. So Ragnar chases him into this cathedral, and then explosives go off, sealing the entrance. So the two of them are trapped in there together.
Okay.
Yeah. And obviously, titanic battle kicks off. Eventually, Ragnar manages to cut the power cords for the hydraulic hoses, for Ghazghkull's armor, making his ridiculously huge armor just a dead weight on him. But Ghazghkull is an absolute unit, so it doesn't stop him from moving, nor does it really slow him down very much. And the two kind of like scream and lunge at each other through the air, and when they land, Ghazghkull has Ragnar in his power claw, like gripped around his whole torso, crushing the life out of him. But Ragnar's sword is impaled through Ghazghkull's throat. So, unfortunately, Ragnar gets his strength together first, and rather than being crushed to death, he is crushed halfway to death and then decapitates Ghazghkull, whose head falls to the floor of this cathedral.
Damn.
Yeah. And that is how Ghazghkull died again. For like the fifth time.
Yeah. So he is kind of like Saint Celestine, you know?
Yeah, he's kind of like Celestine. Just keep fucking going back.
I like that kid from South Park, you know?
Yeah, Kenny. You killed Ghazghkull, you bastard!
You bastard.
So, a couple of interesting things about this. One is that a bunch of Space Wolves and Orcs had been chasing them into this cathedral because they were obviously trying to defend their side. So they were chasing them in when the explosives went off, and basically all of them got crushed to death. One of the only survivors was Makari. I guess because he's so small, he didn't get like crushed by the rubble. He just got kind of buried, and he managed to like dig his way through. So he watches this battle. So the only recount we have of what goes on in that fight between these two is Makari watching it. And after he sees Ghazghkull's like head roll on the floor, he is beheaded in turn.
Okay.
Yeah, so Makari dies as well. Also, interesting part. Ragnar he basically passes out from his wounds after this, and his Space Wolves dig through the rubble and manage to get him out. They take him away, and to save his life, they have to turn him into a Primaris Space Marine. So, like, a week later, he's back bigger and tougher than ever, goes back down, and Ghazghkull's body's gone. He's like, fuck.
Ah, shit.
So really shouldn't have left that unattended.
Yeah, that's a first mistake.
Yeah. So, actually, as Makari is beheaded and his head rolls to the floor, the last thing he sees is Ghazghkull's, like, decapitated head sitting there looking at him with a big grin on its face. And, like, Makari's dying thoughts are like, oh, everything's gonna be fine. The boss is happy. We're good. So, there's a whole thing that goes on as Ghazghkull's head is, like, detached from his body and he's approaching death rapidly. Where he, like, thinks and talks to the gods, and the gods respond to him. So, obviously, they tell him that he is their prophet, they speak through his tusks, and he starts, like, seeing, like, the orcs, like, that were with him fighting on the battlefield and stuff like that. And he sees them, like, losing hope and things. Like, a prophecy of what could come, like, visions of a possible future, kind of thing. And he realizes that he needs to teach them, right? They're losing hope. He needs to be there to teach those fuckers. And that this cannot be the end. Him dying cannot be the end. He's got more work to do. And he hears, like, his vision fades, so he can't see this massive group of orcs anymore. But he hears them all cheer in victory. And he's like, he needs to go lead them. They're his people. They're cheering for him. But how is he going to return to the world? He doesn't know. And the gods tell him he needs to trust in others. Which he starts thinking, like, who is there? And he sees Bullets, his first lieutenant, the first one that he recruited. And he's currently cutting up some dude with a chain axe. And, you know, cheering in victory and all that. And he's like, alright, there is him. And then he thinks more about who else there is. And he sees Snazdaka, one of his other recruits. But Snazdaka's already planning on replacing Ghazghkull. He's trying to figure out how to take over now that Ghazghkull's gone. He's like, alright, well, he's a sneaky bastard. It's not going to be him. And the gods tell him, you need to think harder, right? You're not thinking about the right people. There are others. Think harder. And Ghazghkull thinks again. And this whole time his head's, like, been losing consciousness, obviously, because he is dying right now. So his vision's down to, like, just darkness and a little pinhole, like, before you pass out. And he sees Makari's head lying there in front of him. And he realizes it's Makari the gods want him to trust. Makari will be the way he returns. But how can he trust Makari? Because Makari's a grot. They're made not to be trusted. So the hardest battle Ghazghkull's ever gonna fight is trying to trust this grot at the word of the god. But he dies trusting him. He does trust him. He wins that fight because Ghazghkull doesn't lose. Although his, like, final thoughts as he fades away into death is that he realizes Makari's dead and Ghazghkull's the one that brings him back. So how the fuck is Makari gonna bring Ghazghkull back? It's like an endless cycle. And that's kind of how that ends. Until Makari wakes up sometime later with some dude touching his shoulder. Basically, what had happened, because I'm not going to go through the whole storyline part, I'm going to go through just explaining in a bit simpler terms. What had happened was, do you remember the doctor that had been, like, Ghazghkull's other advisor this whole time? You had Makari advising him one way, and Doc Grotznik advising him the other way. And Doc Grotznik had basically only ever been out for himself. He'd only been trying to make Ghazghkull work for him, trying to control him. So Makari fucking hated him. Also, he's a big creep, so... Grotznik was obviously the only one of these three still alive. He had Makari and Ghazghkull's bodies brought back to his lab, and he used Ghazghkull's hand held by Bullets on a random grot to, like, have it burn the hand onto Makari to make him back into Makari. So he used Ghazghkull's disembodied hand to impart like the will, the blessing of the gods on a random grot to make them Makari. I know, it's nuts. So it basically only worked because they believed it would.
Yeah, I mean,
It's the
I love
benefit
that
of Orcs.
aspect.
As long as
It
you
really
convince
is.
yourself it'll work.
It ain't stupid if it works, Ryan.
That's it. So, not going to go through the fine details, but Makari obviously wakes up, finds out that Grotsnik had brought him back and how he did it, and that he has brought back Ghazghkull's body as well. So this is where it disappeared to when Ragnar went back for him. It's because Grotsnik had went and took it. And Ghazghkull's body was pretty fucked up from their fight, so he was like pretty heavily injured, never mind decapitated. So Grotsnik has rebuilt Ghazghkull in some kind of like Frankenstein type way, where he's like pieced back together and is like 90% machine at this point, which makes him a lot more like this, to be fair. And for the record, Ghazghkull is obviously an absolute giant at this point, but he's like even bigger now. He's like bigger, tougher than ever, but he's still dead. And the final thing to bring him back requires Grotsnik and Makari to work together in this experiment that essentially fills the entire room with green lightning, like from the gods, which does revive Ghazghkull. So in the end, Ghazghkull is brought back to life by his two advisors finally working hand in hand. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I think that is about as good a place as there ever will be to leave off with the Orcs for now.
So Ghazghkull coming back to life.
Bigger and better than ever.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, I have a feeling it's not the last we're gonna hear about him. You know, just
It'd be
in
really
general.
funny if it was, though. That all of this
Like-
brought him back in a big dramatic way and then just never mention him again.
He's back, and then he just was like, you know, I'm getting
I'm
too old for
retiring.
this shit.
Fuck this.
I'm retiring. I'm too old for this.
3
Gotta
deaths
live
is
in a
enough.
mountain.
Like the final
Yeah.
thing ever mentioned about this is like 1,000 years later, they just find him sitting on some random beach planet, just a drink in hand. So the fuck you doing? I've been here for ages, man. I'm relaxing.
I've been on vacation. Indefinitely. Oh
That'd
man,
be great.
wish that was me. So
Right there.
yeah.
What did you think about the Orcs? Now that we're at the end of this, what did you think about the Orcs?
God, it's been one hell of a season.
has.
Started with your little segment of, hey, we've not heard about enough orcs, right?
That was good.
So
You
this-
loved it.
I did. I want to help with the next one though. Whatever we
Oh, yeah.
choose to do after the fanfic.
Yeah. That was one of those
episode.
ideas that I just had on like a random Wednesday night, and I was like, I have to do it now.
Otherwise, it's gonna go there. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know that feeling. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's been good. It's been good. A more deep dive into the orcs and their shenanigans, I should say.
Yeah.
How they think, or well, the lack of thinking, and all
They
in
still get a
all,
lot done,
it's
though.
great. I mean, they
They
do.
really-
If, like you said,
yeah.
if it works and it's stupid, it's not stupid.
Yeah, that's it. That is it.
Yeah.
I feel like the Orcs were a really good one to start with for this like deep diving kind of concept, because they have a couple of characters that you get to know pretty well. They have a few really big like wars and stuff that we can get into that have some kind of lasting effects that like pay off a bit in future and stuff. And they've been particularly active at the most modern day. You know what I mean? So it only ramps up for them, which I think is a really good way of doing it. You know, I think this was a weirdly well chosen first one to deep dive on. Also, they're funny, so there's comic relief built in.
That
The
as well.
names are a
That as well.
problem. The names are awkward.
Nah. The names were the best part, Ryan. I love it. It didn't make any sense. So,
Nah.
but yeah,
Alright. Would you like to round out for the last time for season 5?
Quinky.
Thank you. Season Kinky. Actually, oh, wait, hold on. I just realised, if we ever do a season about Slanesh, can it be season Kinky?
Sure. Great.
I'm sorry.
And then I think that is a good spot as to where we are going to leave it up for this season. Thank you guys so much for listening through all the episodes and the continuous support. We've seen a small podcast of nobody tuning in to actually having, well, a little bit of a small follower base at least, right? You
Yeah,
guys
we're getting there.
tuning in and correcting us when we are making mistakes and
when I'm making mistakes, it's all me, man.
nah, it's also me, Ryan. It's also
you're
me.
blameless.
My bullshittery. Didn't we have like a bullshittery section before with me?
Yeah,
I feel like, man.
I used to give you a word that you had to make up a meaning for.
I mean, to be fair, I was good at that too. I was good at
You
that.
had your moments. There was a couple of them. Looking back, there was a couple of them that you were just like, ah. It's like, where do I start with this nonsense?
It's like you gotta get the corks working. Got the wheels spinning.
It's like improv comedy. It's luck as much as anything else to get a good idea.
We gonna end it here for this season. We're gonna bring some more stuff, and for the people who are still wondering, yes, maybe a little bit of fan fiction as well. It's been
Not
me,
like
MEZ End,
that.
we will catch you in season 6. Take care and peace.
Bye.